Okay, now that our shell is dried, it's time to complete it. And I've gone ahead and cut out where the split is, so we know where to put our time fuse. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and weigh this, so we'll know how much lift we need. Then I can get my scales off the bench here. So this weighs 23.7 ounces. So the way I figure lift, at least for the smaller shells, is I go 10% of the weight of the shell. And that seems to get it to about the right height for me. So anyway, we're going to do 2.37 ounces of lift for this. And I've already pre-measured some of this out. I'm using 2FA powder. I've got this lift cup that I measured it in. I'll actually be putting it into a little baggie when we get ready to put it in. But that's how much I've weighed out here is 2.37 ounces. Okay, so I'll get these out of my way. Okay, so also I know that this 5-inch shell, we would typically need 4 seconds of time fuse to get it up to the proper height before it explodes. So knowing that, here is my time fuse, and I know that 1 inch of this is 3 seconds of time. So I've got a little fuse cutter here, and I've already got it pre-marked, and this is our 1 inch part, so I know that that would be 3 seconds. I've got the next one split up, next inch split up into thirds, so I know that each one of these is a second. So this would be our 4 inches here for our time that we need. Now we need to take in consideration our cross match. So we're going to be putting a hole towards the end of the time fuse for our cross match. So I typically leave about 1/4 of an inch extra, which would put us to this mark, for room for our cross match. And we just simply put our fuse in, and I've got the screw set at that point, so I just butt it to that, cut it off, and now we've got our time fuse. And of course, you don't have to have fancy tools to do all of this. You can measure this out yourself and use some anvil cutters to cut this with. You would not want to use regular scissors. So here's the anvil cutter like this one. Okay, so next we're going to punch our hole in it for our cross match. And you can do this with an awl if you want. I actually have a little deal here for doing that, for punching the hole in it. So all I do with that is run the fuse till we get to the edge here, and then I'll put it over here on my wood post, and we'll punch a hole in that. So there's our hole, nice and clean. The only thing with using an awl is that you kind of loosen the powder in there. But I went a long time before I bought tools to do this with. So now I've taken a section of quick match, and I've taken a couple of strands of it out of the black match, and we're going to insert that in our hole here. And it doesn't have to be quite that long, but that's what I had pre-cut. So now we'll need to tie that in place just to keep it, make sure it's not going to go anywhere or slide out of there. So we will tie that off. I'll use my anvil cutters. Alright, so there we got it. There's our time fuse, cross-matched, ready for our shell. Now, let me set this aside. So we want to hot glue this in place. We'll slide this down into our spillet here. I'm going to use a little piece of cardboard here that I cut to put the hot glue in, just so it contains it good and doesn't run out everywhere on my shell. So I'll put this down in here, and the amount you put down in there is not really important because it's going to shoot the fire up the tube and hit that black match that we have in the center of our shell. So I'm going to leave it out far enough so I can get hot glue in there. And it's very important to get this sealed off good, because if you do not, and when it lights, if the flame gets past your match, it's going to your time fuse is going to explode in the tube. That's what we do not want. So I've got this preheated. I'm going to fill this with our hot glue. And go ahead and unplug that. Well, no, I'm going to leave that on because we're going to need it shortly. Okay, so that's what we currently have. So we'll let that dry a little bit before we handle it. Okay, so I know that my tube for this 5-inch shell is 32 inches in height. And so we want to make sure we've got enough of our quick match to stick outside of that tube. We'll probably be putting an E-match on it so it doesn't have to extend out far, but if we go to 32 inches here, and then I'll usually add a little bit to it, so we're going to go ahead and go to like 42 inches, and that's what I'll cut this at. And that'll give us enough to stick up out of the tube once it's in there. Now I'm going to strip part of this back, part of the paper on here, and expose this match, the black match in here. And this is what we're going to stick down in our burst charge. Okay, so go ahead and cut that out of the way. Alright, so that's what I have there. And now, here again, I want to put a piece of tape on the end of the other end so that I don't have to worry about later a spark setting this thing off prematurely. And so that's ready. I usually will put our black powder in a baggie, and I just took a Ziploc bag to cut the top of it off. I'm going to put our 2.37 ounces of black powder in there, and we could cut some of this off. I'm just going to leave it. We want to stick our quick match down in here, and then we will tie this off. A little extra knot to it. I get my fingers to work this morning. Okay, so I've got that tied off, so I don't have to worry about that coming out. So this is what we got currently, and we're going to be putting that in a pre-made lift cup that I have here. I'll go ahead and push this top of this baggie down kind of out of the way, and we'll run this up the side here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little piece of tape in there to hold it there while we're messing with it. And that just keeps it in place till we can get this put in our, mounted to our shell. Now I'm going to need to let this cool a little bit before I put this on there. But in the meantime, we're also going to put a rising effect. We're going to put a tail on this. And I have previously pumped a star, and wrapped it with just a little bit of tape there. And I used some nitrocellulose lacquer, and which I have added some mill powder to, just black powder before it's granulated. And you dip this star down in that and coat it, and then you stick that down in some 4FA powder. So we've got 4FA powder stuck to the end of it to help it light easier. And we're going to end up attaching this to the top of our shell here shortly. So I want to go ahead and show you that, and that's how we get that. So anyway, we'll set this aside, we'll let this dry, and then I'll come back. See you shortly. Okay, now that the hot glue has dried around our time fuse, we're going to go ahead and put this in our lift cup that already has our black powder in a baggie, our quick match stuck down in that. And some people will hot glue this cup on there, but I'm going to tape it in place. And you do not have to use pre-made lift cups. You can actually just tape the baggie over top of that to the shell. So whatever works there, but I like to look a little bit better, so I'll use a lift cup. And I'll just go around and tape this right now with with our brown tape, and then I'll come back and pretty it up with some gum tape just to make sure it's not going anywhere and it looks a little better. It's a little more finished. Okay, so now that is secured to the bottom of our shell, and we'll be running up the quick match up to the top here and taping it in place. Now on heavier shells you need to incorporate some sort of a string under your tape to stick this through to help offset the tension when you're lowering this down in the tube. No more than this weighs, and I'll tape it good, then it'll probably be just fine lowering it in there and not put any undue stress on our quick match and pull it out of the lift. Okay. So that's what we currently have. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put some gum tape around this before I put my rising tail on that. So let me do that. Let me pretty it up a little bit with our gum tape, and then I'll come back and we'll put the tail on top, finish it. All right. Okay, so I went ahead and put gum tape all around, made it look better, and it's more secure as well, the lift cup is. And I made sure that the quick match is covered really well, going up to the top here to hold it in place. Went ahead and bundled up our quick match, put a rubber band around it, and make it a lot easier for handling, storing, etc. Now it's time to put the tail on it. So the location of the tail does not matter as far as the top of it, where on the top it goes, but it does matter as far as how far down you go. You do not want to get it where it will interfere going into the tube. And also, we don't have to worry about fusing this at all, because the gases from the lift will set this off. And that's what you see in a streak of light in the sky when the shells go up. That is the tail. And I think I used a chrysanthemum mix to make this star, and so I think that's the mixture I used on that. It doesn't really matter. It's just going to give you that light going up in the air. So what I'm going to do is hot glue this on, And then I'll put a little bit of gum tape around it just to help secure it more. And then we will cover it with some tissue paper so we don't have any kind of powder exposed. Alright, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my hot glue to cooperate. Okay, so I'm going to secure it right there in place. Like I said, the location really does not matter, except for getting it too far down on the sides. The hot glue is not quite set up yet, but I'm going to go around and put gum tape a little up the sides to secure that in place better, because there's a possibility, and I have had that happen, where these come off during lift, and in competition that's not good. So we'll put this around there, let everything dry here, and I'll go ahead and put a cover on it. Okay, so now we have this all taped in place. It shouldn't go anywhere. We're going to put our tissue paper over top of that just to protect it from any sparks. So I'll go ahead and do a couple of big loops here, and we will secure this in place. Okay, so that's basically it. And we'll go ahead and trim this off. Okay, so there is our shell with a tail. We'll write on it what it is, because tomorrow I won't remember. So anyway, make sure you label your shells so you know what they are. We'll store this away till I get a chance to shoot this, and then I'll come back with the video. I want to show you how to set these up for firing with electric firing system, actually 2 different ones, or how to hand fire these. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll be back a little later.